Welcome to the Cutting Edge Health Preventing Cognitive Decline podcast. I'm Jane Rogers. Welcome back to the Cutting Edge Health Preventing Cognitive Decline podcast. We all know that toxins are one of the major contributors to cognitive decline. And there is a process called plasma apheresis that helps rid your body, to a large extent, of a whole lot of the toxins that are sitting there. But how do you know how many toxins you have? I didn't think I was that toxic until I had a toxin report done and then analyzed by Dr. Paul Savage. And you've heard him before. He's been on our podcast before. And this is part 2 of his interview that walks through what toxins do, what toxins I have, and how we can get rid of them. Dr. Paul Savage, thank you for joining us once again. I've been very excited to follow up on our interview that we did a couple weeks ago.
It's good to see you again, Jane. You look
Thank you. Oh, bless you. Thank you very much. So, you recommended that I get a toxin test, and I did that. And thank you. I'm very glad that I did. Really glad. So, there are a whole bunch of questions I want to ask you about. The toxin loads that we're seeing today, these are very different than the toxin loads that you and I saw when we were little kids, right?
We didn't see toxic loads when we were little kids. They didn't exist.
So, why? Tell me what's happened.
Well, when we were kids, it was the late 60s, early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really start using pesticides and herbicides in the fields until the late 50s. So, all these DDTs and all the other herbicides, they just weren't there. And it took a number of years. The first one we used was atrazine. It took a number of years for them to even start building up in the environment because those things don't break down. And then, the computer generation started coming and we started needing more of the rare earth. So we started digging into the ground and bringing up these heavy metals that really weren't that significant into our environment as much as they are now. And then then the cars got more and more on the highway. Remember in 60s and 70s, you'd see 2-lane highways with not many cars or trucks, and then 80s more. And then by 2000, you have 8-lane highways, all with the fuel burning pollutants in the air. So the thing is, and then the top one, the biggest one, is the chemical industry. All the cleaners, all the products, all the manufactured things. Those are the things that added more than half of the toxins that we see in our environment. Back in the 1960s, 70s, there weren't many. Now there's over 150,000 different toxins in our environment being fed 250 billion tons per year in the United States alone, with 10,000 new toxins being introduced into the world every year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean when it's a different world, literally, than what it was. Now, the thing is, we grew up and we developed and we matured in a world that didn't have any toxins. But that's not true for the people born in their 80s or the 90s, or especially in the 2000s, because these people are being born into a world already toxic. And they probably got toxins from their moms. And now, 25 years later, because all these toxins are escalating, the kids born today are being born with toxic loads somewhere around 200 times bigger than it was 50 years ago. Yeah.
It's scary. And you were telling me just a moment ago about how you love your new program where you detox a mom before she gets pregnant. Yeah. So that she delivers a baby that is largely free of toxins.
Well, we think that's the truth. I mean, and here's the thing is, we've done a lot of toxin plasma exchanges over the last 2 years as we start revving things up, and we're looking at to see how this affects a whole bunch of different things. And although we have observational data, I want to be clear to your listeners, we're publishing our observational data on the effect of toxins and inflammation in the immune system, but we're also seeing things on patients that just kind of, what we say anecdotally, just as an aside. Now, we had one mom who came in who was in her early 30s, and she had high toxin levels, and she had a high inflammatory level. Her CRP, or C-reactive protein, one of the very basic inflammatory proteins that we look at for adults, was 40. The normal number is under 1, and 40 is way out there. I mean, it's not even just a little high. It's like way, way high. So she's having trouble getting pregnant. She said, do you think I'll benefit? I said, with all these toxins, let's do this. We did 2 exchanges with her, and she announced that she was pregnant. And we're like, okay, stop. She probably needs more but we did enough that she became pregnant. 8 months later, she has a baby girl in Indiana, which is the toxic center of the United States. There's a couple of toxic centers. Indiana is one of them. Baton Rouge, Illinois, or Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where the Mississippi drops out, is another one. LA, New York, but northern Indiana is a very toxic hot spot, and that's where she lived. She delivered the baby, and the doctors were, hey, there's something going on here. The baby's color is off. And they were like, what do you mean off? And it was like, the baby's pink. I mean, like pink. And so they were worried. They ran some tests to come to find out that the baby was perfectly healthy. Matter of fact, the baby was so healthy that almost all newborns get jaundice to a certain degree. This baby never did. Matter of fact, the bilirubin never got much above 2, which is unheard of in an infant. So this is just anecdotal, but it goes along with what we're seeing with all the different things that we're doing, whether it has to do with cancer markers, whether it has to do with immune system strength, whether it has to do with cognitive issues. All these things are moving the same direction and giving essentially the same results of improvement, because it just basically goes back to what we've known for what medicine, even traditional medicine, has known for 20 years. Toxins are driving chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is driving everything bad. What we've never been able to do is figure out a way to get out all the toxins. And that's the part I want to really focus on your readers as we go into your test, because it's not about which toxin that you have that's elevated. It's about stepping back and looking at the picture. Now, what do I mean by the picture? Well, we tested in you 109 different toxins. We tested 300 people in Chicago who were healthy, like you, and the average number per person is 13.2. And these are ones that are in the higher range, 13.2. Matter of fact, in that group, 5 out of 109 were in what they consider the high critical levels, over 95%. And we're not talking about minor players. We're talking about lead, mercury, BPA, PFAs, things that are known to be extremely dangerous to the human species. Those are the type of things that we're seeing. So everybody is toxic. When in our first episode, when I was talking to you the first time, I told you, you are toxic, because everybody's toxic. The question is, how much and with what? Now, the with what is a little bit of a minor player, because there's so many toxins we can't measure. We kind of want to get a gestalt of, it's the toxic load that you have that matters more than the individual toxins.
And so what are those toxins doing to my body?
So, by definition, a toxin is everything that's bad for the body.
Okay.
And it does everything bad. For example, it interferes with every protein that's an enzyme. Because our body works by these little proteins that are enzymes, and they make reactions work. Otherwise, these reactions that would normally not occur give us energy, give us growth, give us everything that we are. We have to have these biochemical pathways working. There are 100,000 biochemical pathways in the body, and toxins interfere with every single one of those pathways. Now, toxins also act as hormones. They can actually act like a hormone, or they can block a hormone. They can increase its production. They can decrease its production. They can get locked into a receptor so that it always works too fast. They keep your brain or your body from producing more hormones. Then there's another one. There's toxins that cause inflammation, that cause your immune system to be suppressed or hyperactive. And there's toxins that come in and burn everything they touch. So they can burn tissues and cells, proteins. But probably the worst thing that toxins do of all is they interfere with your ability to detox. They break the mechanism by which you get them out. And once that's broken, you watch the toxins go on patients. Matter of fact, the average may be 13.2, but we have a set of patients that are out in 30s, and there's nobody in between. And those are the women, and they're women, and they're usually around 60, and they're usually lean, and they usually have what we call beauty, because they've used beauty products, which are just filled with toxins their whole life. And then it's not surprising. And those women tend to have symptoms and illnesses related to cancer and chronic fatigue and all these different things. Are manifesting the disease at that point.
Okay, so before plasma apheresis, which we talked about in part 1, and we'll talk about it further now, but what else could be done to really help the toxin load? There's got to be some other modalities.
There is. And this is the thing, that if people will listen, you can do most of this at home for a very low cost. And it's called avoidance. It's knowing that the toxins are everywhere. Matter of fact, the most dangerous toxins to the human being are in your home, 90% of them. So it's learning how to avoid them. That's why it's avoidance. Having a good water filter installed into your home, and I'm not talking about a pitcher with one of those replaceable caps. I'm talking about a triple filtered, or even better, a triple filtered reverse osmosis system. And even if you have $1,200, you can put one under the sink. If you only have $400, you can buy one that's above the sink that you can use all the time. The reason is almost all the toxins come in through the water. The other toxins come in through the food, cereal, vegetables, processed food. That's why everybody's like, the toxins are in the processed food. By definition, processed foods are toxins because they're processed. That's the whole meaning of the thing. So learning how to pick good selections of vegetables and fruits, stay away from grain, stay away from milk, stay away from fish, except for one time a week where it used to be more. Now it's too bad. Chicken is now the preferred protein, but they have to be farm raised without antibiotics and without steroids. Spend your money on your food. Spend your money on your water filter. Third thing, remove the toxins from your house. Under the sink, both in the kitchen and the bathroom, out in the shed, put them in a part of the shed that you can lock up that's well ventilated. And when you go in there, you wear a mask, you wear a hood, you wear gloves, you cover yourself because those fumes suck into your skin in minutes. And you have to understand those are benzenes, and those are the real carcinogens you got to avoid. People are like, oh, I'm just out there doing a little work. Yeah, fully gowned. And then the final thing is the cosmetic products. It doesn't matter whether it's sunscreen, beauty products, mascara. Those are filled with the worst of the worst type of toxins, the phthalates, the PFAs, and the heavy metals. There are product lines out there that you can do. I can think of one called, Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop. They're all natural products made from that without toxins. I tell women all the time, go there, because I want you to use your beauty products, but please find the beauty products that don't have the toxins. You can simply go to our website at mdlifespan.com/Chicago Clean, and you can have just all this information about where to buy this stuff, what to substitute, because avoidance is what everybody can do. You're protecting yourself. You're protecting your children, because children need to be protected because the toxin loads in the environment are so high.
So that's great advice on how to protect ourselves now. But we have years of not protecting ourselves because I think we as consumers didn't realize the threat. And so we used the cosmetics. We ate the food that was not organic.
Correct.
So what do we do? What are some methodologies to detox? Chelation?
So even if you do all the things with chelation and with binders and with saunas, you're probably only getting out, by most of the studies that we do meta-analysis of, about 25% of some of the toxins. And it's not even the full amount. So it's that's one of the things we were frustrated with in personalized medicine is we had all these protocols and we weren't really making a dent. Matter of fact, we were falling further and further and further behind. But now with the plasma exchange and the plasma exchange protocol that we've developed and patented, there's a way to get in front of this. And once you're in front of it, it looks like you can stay in front of it too. So I do tell everybody, not everybody needs the plasma exchange protocol. If you're younger, if you're healthy, you don't have inflammation, you don't have symptoms, you don't have a chronic inflammatory disease, you probably can get away with the avoidance and then some fiber and some charcoal, and you can buy some simple liquid EDTA or a DMSA from your family health practitioner or functional medicine doc. But once you cross that line over and you either have a lot of toxins or a lot of inflammation, or you start to have some of those inflammatory diseases starting to show up, you really need to be looking at plasma exchange, because it just takes too long for too little results with those old pathways, and you need to get in front of it sooner.
Mm-hmm. Which is why having done saunas and chelation and the charcoal, I've done these things.
And here you are.
And here I am, a toxic being, very toxic still.
You're very toxic. But again, women who are 60, who are leaner, who use cosmetics, they tend to be on this higher end because of the exposure. Cut that down, that gets better too. But you're not alone. Almost except for 2 patients out of 300, everybody had toxins and the average was 13.4 or 13.2 out of 100. That's a lot of toxins,
It's a
where
lot of toxin.
10 years ago it was 6, and 20 years ago it was 2 or 3. How do I know? I've been measuring toxins for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen these toxins increase in quantity, amount, and severity. The toxins we're putting into the environment today are much worse than what they were 40 years ago.
Where's our government?
That's good. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
They know these things. I mean, one of the things, whether you like them or not, hate them or love them, Trump has talked with RFK, who has been voicing very loudly the government is culpable for all these toxins we put into the environment, and I have to agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
but we are the government. We are the government, right? So we better be getting folks in there. We better get folks in there that take this problem seriously, because we need to turn off the spigot. We won't continue to be able to turn this around if we keep pouring in that much toxins, because it's not, and that's just in the United States that amount is being introduced, but it goes everywhere in the world. It's like smoke in a house. You may smoke in one room, but eventually it's everywhere in the house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just to recap, if someone hasn't seen part one briefly, plasma exchange, how much is it going to set them back? Because it does set them back right now.
Sure. So if you're on the East Coast, you're going to be looking at about $8,000 to $9,000 per plasma exchange. If you're on the West Coast, you're looking at $10,000 to $15,000 per session. But one session is almost never enough. Now, our location and the other locations, we're getting ready to launch 3 more in Q1, and then 3 more around the country, starting on the East Coast, moving Midwest and then West. We've been able to get the one version down to $8,000. We've been able to sell packages. If you get more than one, like you get 3 of them, there's a market discount on that. But we also have wrapped this stuff around an integrative approach, a personalized medicine approach to do the avoidance part, so that when we get them down, they stay out. We do add in a supplement with 65 different components, which is patented, which helps your body regenerate, restore, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. It's safe, it's effective. What we've seen in our data is that plasma exchange alone has a good result on toxins, inflammation, and immune system, but you add our protocol to it, you have an 80% improvement in the results. So it's good over here, it's even better over here, but the nice thing is our pricing is essentially the same price as everybody's charging just for plasma exchange itself. Because if you go to the West Coast for a plasma exchange, you're going to pay about $30,000. We charge $30,000 for the plasma exchange too, but we include all the labs. We include all the doctor visits. We include all the supplements. We include all the regenerative programs. That's all included in the program. Because, like I said, plasma exchange is the keystone, but it's all the other stuff around it that makes it even more valuable. So it's not inexpensive. If you're looking to just do one, you're somewhere between $7,000 and $9,000. If you're looking to do what we call the MDO baby, which is where mom's coming in and they want to we usually recommend 2 plasma exchanges, and that's $14,000. If you're coming in to look for toxins to be removed, you're looking between either 3 or 5 sessions, you're looking between $30,000 and $40,000. Same thing with the people who want longevity. There's a program we have for reversing the biomarkers of aging. This became very popular because of Dobry Kiprof's publication with the San Diego group about how we reverse the biomarkers. We're doing the exact same thing at a better price. And then we start moving into other protocols where it's brain health, heart health, immune system, and what we call the anti-cancer or restorative program, because we don't treat cancer, but we can detect cancer now in its very earliest stage before it's cancer by just checking the protein. And we've been able to successfully turn those markers around on the 3 patients, only 3, but it's been amazing because nothing ever worked on those patients before by cleaning up the microenvironment. And we're sure those results are going to be playing forward. So there's many people out there who are doing what's called the GRAIL. It's a liquid biopsy test to see if you have the cell-free DNA. And then they get a positive cell-free DNA, and they go through an MRI. There's no cancer. What do I do next? Well, the answer is plasma exchange. That's what you do next, because that's the way it gets out the toxins. If you return the cells to a healthy microenvironment, it appears that the cells are reverting back to healthy cells and not progressing on to cancer. Because until they cross that final threshold where the DNA breaks, everything up there is a precancerous change. And then suddenly the DNA breaks, it changes. Now you have a cancer. We're talking about a totally different animal. But up to that point, we're detecting many people, and we've been able to reverse those markers early on.
Thank you for explaining that so well. Now, this audience, as you know, we're concerned about preventing dementia, cognitive decline, and
Right.
you and I know, and I think most of this audience does too, that toxins lead to inflammation, lead to problems cognitively. It's just one of those in the cascade.
Toxins, in my opinion, as a physician, and especially in the health and wellness area for 25 years, are the primary cause of every neurodegenerative disease, because toxins take your DNA out where you're the weakest.
Okay.
So if you have DNA that's weak for Alzheimer's, you have DNA that's weak for Parkinson's or heart disease or cancer, that's what the toxins are likely going to cause in your case. So what we've done at MD Lifespan is we've taken our protocol and then we've added regenerative programs for brain health. That includes neuropeptides, what we call extravascular products, supplements that are focused on the brain health. And we actually published a paper in June of 2024 where one of our patients had cognitive decline, significant cognitive decline. He could not keep a sentence going for the life of him. He would forget who his wife was. He would halt in the middle of sentences. And he said, let's do this. And we did the program with him, the full program of 5 TPEs with the supplements. And then we gave him the extravascular products. We gave him the supplements and neuropeptides. We retested him a year later, and his cognitive score had gone up 37% in memory.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was, and this is by what's called the CNS vital sign, which is a measurement that was developed by Harvard and Yale of measuring cognitive function, and it's done on your computer. So people can soon, I mean, within, I think a week, people are going to be able to come to our website and get the CNS vital sign, or they can sign up with a visit with me. I will send it to them. They can do it at their home. We'll come back and we'll talk to them about that, because it's important to know if you're worried about your cognitive decline, you don't know what you don't measure. That's where you and I were arguing the last time. It was like, Jane, you don't know your toxins if we don't measure. And knowledge is power, because now that you know, now we can approach it. Now we can address it. Now we can take a more focused approach to what we need to do to ensure that Jane Rogers is still doing podcasts with me on a guest 30 years from here.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Just wonderful.
It's going to be a date. I'm going to put a pin in it, and then in November 19th in 2054, we're going to sit here one more time and say, you remember 30 years ago when we were talking about this too. So
you wouldn't be here if you were so toxic.
People can see the study. It's in the Journal of Regenerative Medicine in June of 2024. I'm happy to give you the link if you want to share it with your readers.
Could you please?
Or your listeners. Yeah, because we published a paper about this gentleman with the cognitive score and the protocol we use. That's our patented protocol that we use in our centers.
Excellent. Okay, so if we can, let's move on, if we could, to what you're looking for in a toxin test.
Sure.
So there are a couple different things. There were heavy metals. There was mercury. That seemed to be like one of your biggies that you looked at first.
It is.
Tell me why. Why do you turn to mercury and say, whoa?
Well, I think if I could take just a brief second to talk about the test itself.
Okay.
It's a urine test, which is a good way, because the National Health and Examination Survey, which is the United States, measures toxins in us for the last 40 years. And they do it on every year that ends in an 8. So they did it in 88, 98, 2008. They will do it again in 2028. And they're measuring the whole population, and let's say for mercury. And then all the population, the people that are in the upper 5%, that's the number we choose for high critical based upon that survey at that time. And then the same thing with 75% and above, that's the number we pick. So you can understand that these test answers have increased every time that we repeat that test, a lot. So people are like, oh, that's not bad. If I go back to the numbers 40 years ago that we were using, you're going to like, holy crap. But not only are you now not 13.2, you're 47.3 if we're using ranges that were from 40 years ago. So the thing to understand about that test is it's not giving you a disease reference range, a reference range above which we know illnesses occur. It's giving you the reference range of you compared to everybody else in America. Are you in the top 5% of that? So back to mercury, when we're talking about mercury, and of course mercury is deadly to the brain. I mean, it's one of the ones, Alzheimer's, mercury, Alzheimer's, aluminum, Alzheimer's, Epstein-Barr, Alzheimer's, herpes. Doesn't matter the toxin. It's the battle that's going on with the immune system against the toxin in the brain that's killing off the brain. That's always been our belief, been my belief. And what we're seeing is if we can get the toxins out, the battle goes away and the brain can recover. And so when you look at mercury, we know it's highly toxic to the brain. What's the normal amount of mercury in the human being supposed to be normally, healthily?
Nothing.
Correct. It's zero. It'd be zero. Mercury is not part of human physiology. It's supposed to be zero. Yet on that test, look at your mercury score. What is your mercury score that you're reading there?
Oh, you know what?
Oh,
I didn't bring it in here.
And you didn't have mercury per se. You had other ones, but I can tell you your mercury score by looking. Give me just a second here. It wasn't zero for certain. Your mercury score was. It was zero. Wow, that's amazing that you had a zero. Nope, not many people do.
Well, I've tried hard. I've tried really hard to get rid of it.
But your thallium is very high. Your barium is very high, and your nickel is very high. And nickel is also one of those ones that causes all sorts of catastrophes for the brain. And the normal acceptable level for the government to be under the 95 percentile is 12 micrograms per gram. That's a lot. Of nickel. Nickel's another one you're not supposed to have in your body. It does everything like mercury does to the brain as well. You're not supposed to have that in your body either. But in the mercury case, the government says having 1.6 micrograms per gram of mercury, that's the reference range that they say is under the 95%. They're not saying it's normal. They're just saying that's the range above which you're 5%. But the number's supposed to be zero.
I know. Do you feel that's really, in some ways, misleading then?
It is. That's why I wanted to say it's really important to understand we look at the whole picture. So when I tell people, when you're looking at these toxin reports, go down the screen first and start looking at where it's laying, even on the ones that are reported normal, because they're not normal. And then you start looking at certain ones of them. We're pointing out these certain ones that are like, yeah, these are bad players. These are really, because there's the really bad players, and then the players we don't like, but they're bad, but not the ones that I'm ultimately concerned about. That's why when we said the bad players, I'm talking about the microplastics. I'm talking about the forever chemicals, all of them. I'm talking about mercury and lead and arsenic. And I'm talking about some mycotoxins, some mold toxins that are very dangerous. One of them is afloxacin B1, highly carcinogenic, grade A, number 1. And most people have it.
I'm high in that.
Yeah, you are. And that's a carcinogen. You add it to citranon, or you add it to formosin, you have a 5 times higher rate of cancer because of those three together. And you have high levels of all three of those.
I was having a good day until I talked to you,
But the good day thing is there's things you can do, Jane. And even because those toxins all come from grain.
Yes.
And mycotoxins will go down, most of them with time. It takes a little bit of time, but they will go down. The mold toxins are almost universally, not completely, but almost universally in wet wood and cereals and grains. And I tell people all the time, don't live in a house, live in a cave, or live in a house that has brick and more natural things in the house. But try to keep the wood and the other stuff to a minimum if you can. Don't put carpeting down because you have the chemicals in the carpeting that are bad for you. Put down tile, put down stone. You can put down wood. That's great, but just make sure that it's tempered wood so the mold can't get into it. That's the wood that's been treated by pressure and heat so that you can't get through it. Those things you can do. But mostly with the mold, it's get a water filter and then stop eating the cereals. Every cereal, corn, wheat, barley especially, rye, all these grains are just because it used to be we lived in caves, we went outside, we grabbed some wheat, we ate it right there. There was no mold in it because it was fresh wheat. Now we take all these grains, we put them in silos, we leave them there for 10 years where mold is developed, and you cannot kill this mold in the processing process.
So it comes right into your gut.
You're killing the mold, but you're not killing the toxin, and the toxin's coming right in. And it's killing your gut, killing the microbiome, and when you kill the microbiome, you kill yourself. Everything what we've seen is you can get the toxins out through the gut by cleansing it with charcoal and giving it good food, but getting the toxins out through the plasma exchange, the gut gets better too, because it doesn't matter to the body how you get the toxins out. Just get them out.
So if I'm having a lot of gut trouble, I had never really linked the fact that just could be an accumulation of toxins.
It is. Almost. So people are like, I've always had fatigue. I've always had cramps. I've always had gas. That's just normal. No, it's not. It's never normal. That's not the way the body works. If you have symptoms, that's why they're symptoms, because they're signals of illnesses. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And everybody, sorry, my puppy. And people say all the time, I'm getting older, so now I have these symptoms. That's not a good thing. If you're starting to develop symptoms, something's changing.
Yeah.
And that's your body talking. Listen to your body. Now, the frustration people get is they go to their doctor and the doctor says nothing's wrong. Trust me, he just did the wrong test. Just because the test is normal doesn't mean there's nothing wrong. Do a toxin test. Take a look at that, because toxins are the major cause of chronic inflammation today. That's different than 50 years ago when it was smoke and viruses. Now it's toxins. Smoke and viruses are still there, but they're small in comparison to how much the toxin burden is placing on the immune system, on the chronic inflammation. And that's what generates chronic inflammatory diseases. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if we remove the toxins and we therefore can eliminate the chronic inflammation, which is what our studies have shown and are publishing within the next month, then the next step is we should be able to arrest and possibly even reverse to a degree some of those chronic inflammatory diseases. And to date, we're seeing some anecdotal evidence that supports that. So we're on the edge of something. We're on the edge of something that is going to be as big as a CAT scan changed medicine, or MRI changed medicine, or cephalosporin changed medicine when I was a resident, because now the kids stopped dying, or HIV meds saved all the gay population, or these transformational changes in medicine only occur once every 10 or 15 years. But this one is bigger than all of them, because I could just say a professor at a major university said Alexander Fleming saved a third of the world when he invented penicillin and killed off the plague. Mm-hmm. What you've got here is going to save 2/3 of the world.
And on that note, Dr. Savage, thank you for your time and your passion. It's wonderful to meet someone who is just in love with helping people, and I know that is your case.
Yep. I would end by saying the commitment of our physicians, of our whole team, we've grown substantially in the last year. Since I last saw you, we've doubled in size again. But we're now a public benefit company. What does that mean? That means we're driven by the mission of which we're to help people remove and eliminate the toxins out of their life to restore health and longevity to everybody. So it's in the public's best interest, and we all recognize that. So I just wanted to say, some of us out here, we're doing things in a way that's corporate to prove the passion that my team has. It's not for us. We have to make money because we can't treat people if we don't. We will be driving these prices down as we get bigger, because that's what economy of scale does. We have people, the research that's going to make things to make it faster, quicker, and less expensive as well. And eventually people like, is the government going to pay for this? That is our ultimate hope. Since the government is partly responsible, we are the government responsible for making it in the first place. We better put something in place for all to get it back out so that we can still go on to maintain our health and wellness, because we need to save the next generation, give them enough time to develop the plastic-eating bacteria that fixes the world. Right now, as it stands, our calculations are we don't have enough time.
Ooh.
And how can I say that? That's not me that said that. Stephen Hawking said that before he died, that pollution and our stupidity to it is the only existential threat to mankind. And we passed that milestone 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then he died from ALS, which is a neurotoxic disease.
Yeah. Tragic.
That's ironic. That's ironic and tragic.
Dr. Savage, thank you. You have an awesome full day, okay?
Thanks, Jane.
You've been listening to the Cutting Edge Health Preventing Cognitive Decline podcast. Any information shared here is for educational purposes only. Guest opinions are their own. This podcast is not responsible for the veracity of their statements. Do not use any of this information without first talking to your doctor. Cutting Edge Health, LLC, is not responsible for what may happen to you if you use their information in place of official advice from a medical professional. Thanks for listening. Be well.